Okay, so $70 billion.
Wow.
That's the Indian alcohol market.
That's a huge market.
It is. It's absolutely massive. But here's the thing that I found really interesting.
Okay.
Hard liquor totally dominates,
Really?
which is kind of unusual when you think about other countries with really hot climates.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, think about Vietnam, right?
Right.
Similar kind of heat and humidity, but they're all about beer gardens.
Yeah.
It's a totally different scene over there. And here, it's, well, you know.
Yeah.
So this isn't just some random trivia.
Right.
This is a massive market with hard liquor in the lead. And that spells opportunity.
Opportunity for sure.
So that's exactly what we're going to unpack today in this deep dive.
All right, let's do it.
This deep dive is really for you, the listener.
Okay.
Whether you're just curious about this booming industry,
Uh-huh.
or maybe you're thinking about a business idea,
Okay.
or you just want to get smart on the subject without getting lost in all the data.
Right.
We've curated insights from all different angles of the industry,
That sounds really useful.
from running a bar to large-scale manufacturing.
So we're getting the full picture.
Exactly. We're not just looking at this from like 1,000 feet up.
Right.
We're getting down into the weeds.
Love it.
So our source today is a really interesting conversation with Nikhil Kamath.
Okay.
And he's talking with Meenakshi Singh, who's right there on the front lines of the bar scene.
Yeah.
Abhishek Khaitan from Radhiko Khaitan.
They're a major player.
They're a huge player in the production side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And Suraj Shenoy from Go Brewing
Okay.
and the Gin Explorers Club.
Oh, cool.
So he's giving us the inside scoop on craft spirits and events.
So we're hearing from people who are actually doing it.
Exactly. Making things happen at all different levels.
Yeah, I like that.
So our mission is simple.
Okay.
We're going to pull out the most insightful nuggets,
Mm-hmm.
share some surprising facts that will make you think,
Yeah.
and keep it engaging
Keep it fun.
without wasting your time.
All right, sounds good to me.
No dry lectures here. We want to give you a solid understanding and maybe even spark that next big idea.
That's the goal.
All right, so let's get into it.
Let's go.
We've mentioned that $70 billion figure,
Yeah.
but let's break it down.
Okay.
So $40 billion of that is hard liquor,
Why?
and $12 billion is beer.
Okay.
That dominance of hard liquor in a tropical climate is pretty unusual.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. It is interesting.
It's a real anomaly. It
Yeah.
makes you think about what's driving that.
What could be behind that?
Why is it so different here?
Yeah.
Now let's look at the big players in terms of value.
Okay.
United Breweries, particularly with Diageo,
Mm-hmm.
they've got a huge chunk of the market share.
They do?
Then you've got Country Liquor,
Okay.
which caters to a different price point
Right.
than Diageo again and Radhiko Khaitan.
Yeah.
They actually claim to have about 10% of the market.
10%. That's significant.
It is.
So it gives us a sense of the scale.
Exactly. It shows you how competitive the landscape is.
Yeah, for sure.
And the market's always changing, right?
Of course.
So certain segments are really picking up speed.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Tequila, for example.
Okay.
Now it's starting from a small base.
Yeah.
But it's seeing really rapid growth.
Oh, that's interesting.
And vodka is also gaining traction,
Vodka
typically with younger people and women.
makes sense.
And the flavored vodkas are really leading that charge.
I can see that happening.
Now, switching over to beer,
Okay.
there's a trend of people trading up.
What do you mean?
They're moving away from those mass market beers, like Kingfisher,
okay.
and they're going for more premium options,
Like what?
like Budweiser and Heineken.
Ah, I see.
And this is creating a big opportunity in that premium plus category.
Premium plus.
Yeah, that space between the mass market and the very high end.
Okay, so there's a gap there.
There's a gap there.
Interesting.
So you've got this overview of the market now.
Right.
But let's think about you, the entrepreneur listening. What are the opportunities here?
Where can you start?
Exactly. Where could you realistically start?
Yeah, that's the key question.
So one thing that came up was this desire to create a super differentiated product.
Okay.
Something with like unique, never before seen ingredients.
Yeah, you want to stand out.
Right. But the reality is you really need to understand the existing market.
Understand what people are actually buying.
Exactly what are people actually buying
Right.
and what's the market share like?
Yeah, you need to know the lay of the land.
So for someone new with limited funds,
Mm-hmm.
it might be smarter to focus on building a strong brand
Well,
and a solid distribution network
that makes sense.
rather than jumping straight into manufacturing.
Yeah, that could be really expensive.
It could be very expensive, like
Mhm.
setting up your own distillery
Yeah,
with around 10 core rupees.
that's a lot of money.
It's a huge investment, and a lot of that gets tied up in equipment.
I can imagine.
Goa Brewing, they talked about this. They said a lot of their capital went into just the equipment.
Wow.
So co-packing seems like a much better option.
Packing.
Yeah, you can start smaller.
Okay.
You can concentrate on your recipe and your brand.
Yeah, let someone else handle the production.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
So there's that low-hanging fruit.
Where are the easy wins?
Whiskey's still the big one.
Yeah.
Highest value, most consistent demand.
Right.
But if you're starting with, say, 30 to 50 lakhs.
That's a more realistic starting point for a lot of people.
It is. So what then? A niche category like gin
Gin. Okay.
could be a good place to start.
Right.
And places like Goa, Delhi, Gurgaon,
Yeah.
those were mentioned as good initial markets.
Interesting. So geographically specific.
Yeah,
I like it.
but you've got to think about the costs.
Oh, yeah. The financials always matter.
Absolutely. Listing fees can eat up a lot of your capital.
How much are we talking?
In Delhi, for example,
Okay.
they're looking at maybe 12 lakhs just for listing fees per brand
12 lakhs per brand.
for vodka or gin.
Wow.
And that's before you even think about your branding costs.
Yeah, that adds up fast.
It does.
So you've really got to plan carefully
You do.
and be aware of all those hidden costs.
Absolutely. And Abhishek made a really important point.
What's that?
Patience.
Patience.
He said getting those first 10,000 loyal customers,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part,
I bet.
but it's also the foundation for everything else.
The foundation, you've got to have that solid base.
You need that solid base.
Yeah, makes sense.
So how do you get your brand in the hands of those loyal fans?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. The go-to-market strategy needs to be very specific.
Okay.
Don't just focus on distributors.
The primary sale.
The primary sale, yeah.
So what should you focus on?
You've got to get your product into retail and sold to consumers.
That's the tertiary sale.
That's the tertiary sale.
Okay, so focus on the end consumer.
Absolutely. And it all comes down to relationships.
Relationships, okay.
Both Suraj and Meenakshi talked about this.
Okay.
They said connecting with bar owners,
Like Meenakshi.
like Meenakshi retailers, even the bartenders.
Right.
Those guys behind the counter.
Yeah, they can make or break a brand.
They can absolutely make or break a brand.
Yeah.
Building that trust, getting them to recommend your product,
That's gold.
it's absolute gold.
Word of mouth is so powerful.
And there's a great story about Paul Ricard,
Paul Ricard.
founder of Pernod Ricard.
Okay, I know them.
He built his brand by visiting one bar every single day,
Wow.
offering samples.
That's dedication.
That's dedication, and it worked.
Clearly, he was onto something.
So let's talk about some specific product and price point ideas.
Okay, I like where this is going.
In the beer category,
Okay.
that premiumized consumer.
The Kingfisher to Heineken crowd.
Exactly. Offer them a slightly elevated product,
Okay.
like a destination product.
A destination product. Interesting.
Something special, you know?
Right.
Focus on quality, not just jacking up the price.
Right quality over just profit margin.
Now, for whiskey,
Okay.
there was this idea of creating India's bourbon
India's bourbon. That's intriguing.
at a price point of maybe 1,200 to 1,400 rupees.
Okay, so tapping into that growing cocktail culture.
Exactly. And bourbon flavors aren't really that well represented here.
That's true.
So a good story, a great blend, and attractive packaging.
Yeah, that's important.
And get the bartenders on board?
They're your ambassadors.
They are.
Interesting.
Rum is another one.
Rum. Okay.
Premium or semi-premium flavored rums.
There you
Maybe in that 1,200 plus range.
Okay.
Appealing to a different kind of customer.
Not the old monk crowd.
Not the old monk crowd.
Interesting.
Brandy now.
Brandy.
It's a big market,
Yeah.
especially in the South,
Right.
but it's very regional.
So maybe not the easiest to break into.
Not for a national brand,
Right.
but Abhishek had a really cool idea.
Oh, what's that?
Ethnic Indian spirits.
Ethnic Indian spirits.
Think about India's heritage and all those unique ingredients
Right.
like wild rice ferments or mahua-based spirits.
Okay, yeah, those are unique.
They could command a higher price,
A higher price.
better margins.
Yeah, and a really unique selling proposition.
Exactly. And Radico's had success with this.
Oh, yeah.
With brands like Rampur and Jaisalmer.
Right. Those are premium brands.
Premium Indian named brands.
Cool. So that approach can work.
It can definitely work.
All right, so let's say you've got your product.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get it out there?
Distribution.
Distributions, that's the key.
It is.
Especially for a startup
Right.
going up against those big players.
So Radico, they've got these global partnerships
Yeah.
with strong local distributors.
Makes sense for them.
But for a startup in India,
Hmm.
you need a more targeted approach.
Okay.
Get your product into those influential bars,
Okay.
like Sidecar in Delhi.
Yeah, those trendy spots.
Exactly. Create a halo effect.
People see it there, they want it.
And reverse distribution is a really interesting concept.
Reverse distribution.
Yeah, you create demand at the retail and bar level
Yeah.
before you even go to the distributors.
So the demand is already there.
Makes it less risky for them,
I see.
and there's always the option of incentivizing sales.
Like giving bartenders a bonus to push your product.
Exactly.
That can get expensive,
It can.
right?
Now let's talk marketing.
Right.
You can't exactly run a TV ad for your new vodka.
No, it's a dark market.
It is.
So how do you get the word out?
Events and sponsorships.
Events and sponsorships. Okay.
Cocktail festivals like the Gin Explorers Club.
Yeah.
You're generating content, engaging with consumers directly,
And bypassing those advertising restrictions.
and aligning your sponsorships with your brand values.
Like Goa Brewing with their sustainability focus.
Exactly. It creates those positive associations.
People remember that.
Word of mouth is still king.
Absolute.
Authentic recommendations from bartenders and happy customers.
That's more valuable than any ad, for sure.
Now, celebrity endorsements,
Okay.
they might get you some visibility,
Yeah, people recognize the celebrity.
but they don't always translate to sales.
Interesting.
People need to feel like it's genuine.
Right. It can't feel forced.
And then there's product placement.
Oh, yeah, in movies and TV shows.
That is
That can be
good.
subtle but effective.
It can.
Okay.
But the key takeaway here,
Yeah.
building a brand in India takes time.
It's a marathon.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Slow and steady.
You need that quality product and that word of mouth buzz.
You can't rush it.
And you can't expand too quickly without that solid customer base.
Right. Or you'll crash and burn.
Now, the regulatory landscape,
Oh, boy.
this is where things get complicated.
I bet.
State-specific regulations are everywhere.
Each state is different.
28 states, 28 different sets of rules.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is.
Yeah.
So registering your product labels,
Mm-hmm.
that's different in every state. And there can be objections to your registration.
Objections.
Yeah, it can hold things up.
So you've really got to be on top of it.
You do.
Dot your I's and cross your T's.
Absolutely. And then there's pricing controls.
Pricing control.
Some states regulate how much you can charge.
Really?
And they might even require you to have the lowest X distillery price
In the whole country?
in the whole country just to register there.
Wow.
So you're competing on price right from the start.
Yeah, that's tough.
And getting the licenses for manufacturing and sales.
Yeah.
It's a long and winding road.
I bet.
Siraj said he spent 6 months
6 months.
just navigating the Goa excise department.
Oh, my goodness.
So buckle up.
It's a wild ride.
Now let's talk about seltzers.
Seltzers, those are popular.
They're huge in the U.S.
Yeah.
But will they work here?
Good question.
Well, there's this idea that Indians have this DIY drinking culture.
DIY?
Yeah, they like to mix their own drinks.
With soda or water?
Exactly. So a pre-mixed seltzer might not appeal.
That makes sense.
Plus, pre-mixed cocktails have distribution challenges.
Yeah, you got to keep them cold.
Refrigeration is a big issue.
Right.
What about wine stores?
Wine stores.
Are they a good business opportunity?
I don't know.
The source didn't go into a lot of detail,
Yeah.
but it sounds like if you get the model right
Mm-hmm.
and navigate the licensing,
Yeah.
there could be potential there,
Okay.
maybe with a focus on more niche curated selections.
Interesting.
Now, what if import duties on foreign liquor were to drop?
Drops significantly.
Like from 150% down to 30%?
Wow, that's a big drop.
It is. Could Indian manufacturers compete?
That's a tough one,
It would be a challenge,
for sure.
even though some Indian products are already premium priced.
Right, they're already competing on quality.
Exactly. But the current tax structure
Yeah.
sometimes makes Indian brands less profitable for bars,
Really?
which is kind of strange when you think about it.
It is a bit counterintuitive.
It is.
Mem-
Malt whiskey. Malt whiskey, that's a long game.
It is.
8 to 12 years for maturation.
It's a long time.
So it's a big barrier to entry for new distilleries.
Yeah, and you need patient capital for that.
Absolutely. Nikhil Kamath is interested in backing these kinds of ventures. He wants to support passionate founders
Okay.
who are creating Indian brands with global potential.
That's a good investment thesis.
It is, but there's also this concern about Gen Z drinking less.
Oh, yeah, that's a trend.
It is a trend.
So the market might be shrinking.
It's something to consider.
Definitely.
Now, this concept of Indianness,
Indian.
stuff brand narrative,
Does that work?
are people buying into that?
It seems to be.
Really?
There's this growing pride in Indian identity,
Yeah, notice that.
and people want to support local products
So authentic Indian stories.
and branding.
Okay.
Like Radico using Sanskrit inscriptions and Indian names?
Right.
That seems to resonate.
So it's not just about slapping on a label.
It has to be genuine.
It has to be real. Now, what about agave-based spirits beyond tequila?
Beyond tequila.
Okay. Could you have Indian-produced agave spirits
As a cheaper alternative,
to imported tequila?
which is getting expensive.
It is getting expensive.
So that could work.
It could, especially if there's consumer education
And a good story.
and a good story.
People need to understand it.
They do.
Right.
And by the way, tequila doesn't actually give you less of a hangover.
Oh, that's a myth.
It's a myth.
Good to know.
So finally, let's talk about hangovers.
Hangovers, everybody's favorite topic.
They're caused by congeners,
Congener.
those impurities and higher alcohols
Okay.
that are produced during fermentation and distillation.
So the cleaner the spirit,
Better.
like vodka,
Right.
gin,
If someone made,
Oh, they
they'll
need-
have fewer congeners.
Makes sense.
Beer's a bit different, though. It's not distilled,
Right.
so clean fermentation is really crucial.
To minimize those hangover effects.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. What are the key takeaways for you, the listener?
The big things to remember.
I'd say start small.
Okay.
Focus on a niche like gin.
Right.
Use a co-packing model.
Keep those costs down.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
understand those state-specific regulations.
Those are crucial.
They are, and don't underestimate the power of personal relationships.
Get out there and talk to people.
Talk to the bar owners, the retailers, the bartenders.
Build those connections.
Exactly.
It's all about relationships.
It is.
All right, so we've done our deep dive.
We have.
What's next?
Here's a final thought for you.
Okay.
Given the size and the uniqueness of this market,
Mm-hmm.
what's that underserved niche that could be the next big thing? Or how can a new brand authentically connect with this idea of Indianness?
Yeah. How can they tap into that?
Those are the questions to ponder.
Some food for thought.
So on that note,
Yeah.
we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
It has.
Cheers.